Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, March 27th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Lisa Heinzerling, law professor at Georgetown University. Also, Heather Herbert, hospice registered nurse at PeaceHealth Medical Center in Springfield, Oregon. Member of the Oregon Nurses Association. Also on the program today, new polling, 55% of Americans now disapprove of Israel's military action in Gaza. Total reversal from November. 36% now only approve. This as a State Department staffer resigns over Biden's Gaza policy. In Alabama, Democrat wins a state Senate special election after running on abortion rights. Fifth Circuit Federal Appellate Court rules that Texas has no right to arrest and deport migrants. Next stop, probably the Supreme Court. VW workers in Tennessee to vote on unionization on April 17th, about 2 weeks away from now. This as Mercedes workers file union-busting charges with the National Labor Relations Board. Boston University grad workers are on strike. Poll shows that a negative partisanship is going to favor Biden over Trump. Judge in the hush money case issues a gag order on Donald Trump. And Democrats on the House Oversight Committee call for Jared Kushner influence peddling hearings. Ronna McDaniel, now richer and angrier after the NBC firing. Lastly, six missing, presumed dead from that catastrophic collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the program, folks. Emma is out today, so it's riding solo, just getting ready for the big 20th anniversary of this program, which is taking place Friday. It's actually technically, I think the date is the 30th, but that's Saturday, and I'm not gonna. We're not gonna be that. We're not gonna be that pedantic as to have me work on a Saturday.
Was that the original best show?
No, this is I'm dating it back to Air America when it became a professional operation, so to speak, right. As opposed to the one-off that I did in February of 2002.
Oh wow,
2003.
Yeah.
So the first one was done February of 2003 in the run-up to the Iraq War. And Janine was actually a guest on that program. And then a year and change later, Air America had launched, and we opened up on March 30th. I think it was at 12 p.m. Franken was the first show. And then the full slate happened on April 1st, which is, as you know, April Fool's Day.
That's a great day to launch it.
And it was even back then. Let's look at a video of what happened. We didn't play this clip yesterday. 6 people presumed dead, missing, presumed dead. As far as we know at this point, and I think there's been some information released about the workers who were working on the bridge at, I guess it was 2 or 3 in the morning. And the reports I have seen say they include citizens of El Salvador, of Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, immigrants. Unclear if all 6 were immigrants. It's also possible that none of them were. I don't know that we have the specifics on that. But I would imagine, these are guys who, 1:32 in the morning are working, to shore up that bridge. One reports that there was one man from El Salvador who was a 19-year Baltimore resident and had been working for the company that was doing the work on the bridge for over a decade, and a father of 3. I say this because later in the program we will play the clips, and it was we played we mentioned this. I don't know if we mentioned it yesterday, but the number of right-wingers who came out instantaneously, and maybe not instantaneously, but very quickly, saying that this was a problem of DEI, led me to believe that they're all in some type of email list, because you have to be out of your freaking mind to believe that this is a function. I mean, it's always a ridiculous claim, but this is just even more bizarre. But here is what it looked like. You will see in this video, the ship has reportedly lost power multiple times. Now, this company, my understanding is that this had been inspected, and apparently had some problems with whistleblowers who were talking about safety issues on these ships. It's unclear whether it directly relates to anything that could have happened with this ship, but you can see they lose power, and it comes back on and it goes off, and it comes back on, it goes off. And unclear what they were trying to do to deal with this, but you can see this here. Roll this.
Those are the last vehicles getting off over before they close the bridge there.
And now the word went out to close the bridge, but apparently the workers, who had about 90 seconds time, were not told. And you can see those cars just racing across.
Yeah. And this is a little bit sped up too. I'll just
now watch the lights come back on. And then I think the lights go off again on the boat. Yeah. They go off again. And then they come back on just briefly. There's been some, speculation. Maybe the fuel was bad. Unclear. But
they're mixing.
And then there's the impact right there. Really horrific. But this is apparently this cargo company. And again, we mentioned this yesterday, but they apparently the feds have in the past cited this company Maersk for its policy of blocking employees from reporting safety concerns to the Coast Guard. But the other thing to keep in mind, and we've talked about this in other contexts, this bridge, and some people emailed in and said that there are other bridges, I think one in Vancouver, that had been shored up with like cement casings around the barriers to avoid this type of situation. This bridge was built, I think it was 40 or 60 years ago, and it maybe it was closer to 50. And it was not built to withstand impact from a ship of this size. But as we've mentioned in the past, so it was 77. I can't do the math there, but about 50 years, 47 years or something like that. This bridge was not built to withstand the impact of a ship that big because those ships didn't really exist at that time. But the consolidation in this industry, where they have made much bigger ships, and we've talked about this problem in the context of the supply chain issues we had during COVID. There's only so many ports that can handle a ship this big. And again, this is the perfect example of privatizing the profits and socializing the costs. It was because these ships, these companies have consolidated and are building much bigger ships so they can cut their operating expenses, which of course don't get passed on. But the safeguards that are needed is associated with their sort of profit enhancing changes. The cost of those safeguards are imposed upon the rest of us, whether it's, you know, the city or state having to build a different bridge or whatnot. I mean, these are all externalities that we end up paying to subsidize the profits of these companies. When we deal with supply shortages, when we deal with trucks backing up in a port because there's only a couple of ports that can handle a ship this way, these are externalities that we as a society pay so that these massive ship conglomerates can maximize their profits. This is the classic example of that. We'll talk about the insanity of the right-wing response to this, which again, of course, you know, it's always a twofer. They're going to blame this on women and black and brown people. And what they're also doing is obscuring the real issue here, which is that we've allowed these shipping conglomerates to concentrate and to build ships, frankly, that we don't necessarily have the infrastructure to handle.
Yeah.
And now we're paying the price. And so
those ships aren't that big because of wokeness. They're that big because of profit.
Exactly. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Lisa Heinzerling, law professor at Georgetown University, both about the her thoughts on the Mifepristone hearing, I guess, that we heard yesterday, and the broader judicial war on the government's ability to govern. Talk about that in just a moment. First, a couple of words from our sponsors. Think about some of your favorite duos, folks, who have made big leaps forward in our society. I guess I don't know, Lewis and Clark, a couple of those astronauts. I don't know. There was more than two.
Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. And
sure.
Yeah.
That's good. But what about the perfect duo when it comes to growing your business? It's you and Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify is there to help you grow. Doesn't matter whether you're selling scented soap, offering outdoor outfits, or perhaps maybe merch from your favorite podcast, like the Majority Report, or I don't know, it could be anything. Shopify helps you sell everywhere. Helps you sell from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person point-of-sale system. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify has got you covered, and it all integrates. Shopify also helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. And you could sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic. It's your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., and Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds and Rothy's and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries, including the Majority Report merch store. Told this story many times, but I was very intimidated about opening up. I thought it'd be a huge pain in the ass. And Shopify made it super easy, completely turnkey. And the beauty of it is both that they have award-winning help that will support you as you're trying to build it, but also it grows with you. And like I say, integrates with, doesn't matter where you sell, in real world or online, and of course, all of the major social media platforms. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/majority, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/majority now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/majority. Also sponsoring the program today, super meaningful gift that keeps on giving. It's a piece of tech, but the beauty of Aura frames is that you can give it to somebody who is technically challenged. So that means your mom, your grandparents, your dad, your aunts, your uncles, your sisters. It doesn't matter. It's a great digital picture frame. In fact, it was considered named #1 digital frame by Wirecutter, Strategist, and Wired. And it allows you to share pics of all the things that you want to share. You got kids? This way, you don't have to keep sending separate emails and whatnot. They can actually get the pictures, have them displayed. And the beauty of this is you can load the pictures on there, not only remotely, but even before they plug it in. You can also load in their Wi-Fi deets. And so that when they plug in the frame, it does all the work, and all of a sudden they're seeing pictures. Also, it has unlimited storage and simple controls for this frame, so you can upload as many photos as you want. Mom, grandma, grandpa, dad, they can pick the perfect one. Right now, you can save on the perfect gift that keeps on giving by visiting auraframes.com. For a limited time, listeners can get $20 off their best-selling frame with the code MAJORITY. That's AURA frames.com. Promo code majority. Terms and conditions apply. We will put the links to both of those in the YouTube and podcast descriptions, as well as majority.fm. As always, it's your support that makes this show possible. If you want the show free of commercials, you can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Check it out. 20th anniversary coming up. We'd love your support. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Lisa Heinzerling. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Want to welcome to the program Lisa Heinzerling, a law professor at Georgetown University. Lisa, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with, now you've written a piece in about the sort of ongoing assault by the Supreme Court on our government's ability to govern in many respects. But let's start with this Mifepristone case because it's almost like a cousin, or at least one of the claims, sort of a cousin to this idea of the Chevron doctrine and the idea of Congress being able to delegate to executive agencies an authority to sort of to execute the broad prescriptions in a statute, let's say. So, but let's start with the Mifepristone. What was the nature of this case?
An anti-abortion group that's made up of other anti-abortion groups for the most part wanted the FDA to undo certain FDA had relaxed the requirements for prescribing and administering Mifepristone, which is used, among other things, to induce abortions. And
my understanding is 50% of abortions in this country now are a function of Mifepristone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the latest number I saw was actually 60%. And so they wanted to have them not relax requirements, such as having the women go to an in-person appointment with a medical professional. And so they relaxed that, and these groups challenged that relaxation. And that's the kind of judgment that an agency like the Food and Drug Administration is usually given a lot of leeway on, because the FDA, that's what they do. They're charged by Congress with ensuring the safety of drugs. They're also charged by Congress with making safe drugs available to people who need them. And so that's the kind of judgment about what actually a woman needs to do in order to take this drug safely. That's the kind of judgment usually entrusted to the FDA. And the court, the Fifth Circuit, which has become notorious recently because of very, very aggressive and legally highly questionable rulings, and in particular on questions about agencies and government responsibilities. And so they said that the government hadn't done a good enough job explaining itself, and that's what came up to the Supreme Court yesterday.
Well, I've had trouble trying to figure out exactly what their claim is. I mean, their claim was very strange. It was not just that they were claiming that it was they claiming that the drug was dangerous, or they were claiming on some level that they could be personally harmed, because one of the issues is their standing in this case, that they could be harmed as doctors in having to deal with the fallout of someone taking this drug. Now, of course, it turns out most of them are retired or dentists who presumably would not be on the list of people who would be called in the event that there was an adverse reaction to this. And we know what the adverse reactions are. I mean, it was something like 32 people out of the 6 million who took it passed away. It wasn't even necessarily a direct cause of the Mifepristone, but they had taken it within a certain period of time. But what was their claim? And is this going to end up being resolved on its merits, or is it going to be a standing issue?
Yeah, so their claim, they have to say that they've been injured or going to be injured in order to get into federal court. That's just a requirement the Supreme Court has created for these cases. And their injury was very hard to pin down even yesterday at oral argument. They say that these doctors don't want to be involved in actually performing an abortion, but more than that, they don't want to be complicit in an abortion by treating a woman who is having complications due to Mifepristone. And so that the limits of that kind of principle, the complicit principle, are very unclear. And so just to cut to the chase, this case involves so many different possibilities, conjectures, speculations before you could conclude that anyone in front of the court has ever been injured or ever will be injured by the administration of this drug. And interestingly, that is one of the features of a lot of the cases that are questioning the authority of government today, where the Supreme Court has issued other cases that have sort of flown under the radar, some of them, where the injury is highly dubious, maybe non-existent. And they just have been very lax about that. But it appears from the oral argument yesterday that the justices thought even this was too little.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, the scary part about it, and as we, sort of pivot to your piece, and you make the point that in one of the cases that seems to be sort of taken up by the court as an opportunity to further erode the Chevron doctrine, which is about deferring to the expertise of agencies when they're promulgating regulations to ostensibly carry out what the law that Congress passed, that they're taking these cases and resolving them not necessarily on the material question at hand, but rather as an opportunity to further create new law, essentially, by destroying old law and overrunning precedent. And I wonder in this case, like, was there any indication? Because it seems to me like it's pretty obvious there's no claim here of damages. Like they're a third party to a, it's one thing, I guess, if maybe there are people who've taken the drug and say that it wasn't ready and the FDA didn't do their job, but they're not saying that. Was there any indication that you could tell at this point, and we won't really know until there's a ruling, but was there any indication that there was an attempt to erode aspects of abortion rights further, or empower other, I don't know whom, but was there an ideological bent to this? If they can just dismiss it out of hand as you don't have standing, it seems like something they could have probably done on the shadow docket quite easily.
Well, I think it's ideological all the way down. Just all the way down. The groups that are bringing this are sort of fronts for the conservative legal movement, in particular the anti-abortion movement. The injury they suggest is, as I say, just highly improbable, and in any normal case would not have, I think, gotten even past the first stage of litigation. The Supreme Court has decided to only decide in this case whether to overrule the Chevron case you mentioned. So it may decide the case which involves a rule about fisheries. It may decide that case without saying a word about fisheries, because it took only the most abstract and consequential piece of the case, which is, should we overrule Chevron? And so there's a way in which there's nothing about any of these cases except for the agenda of the conservative legal movement.
All right, and let's get a little more specific so people can understand what we're talking about. We're talking about Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, who is the Commerce Secretary, and this involves fishing ships that have been required by the government to have basically an inspector on board to make sure that they're following our regulations about fishing, and they're required to pay for it. And the court could have said, like, well, it's not fair to make them pay for it, but they're not addressing any of the material aspects, just the broad question: can the Commerce Department, I guess it is in this instance, can they even promulgate a rule like this, never mind whether the rule is right or wrong?
Yeah, they're just answering whether, maybe not even whether they can promulgate it, but just answering the very, again, conceptual question about whether courts should be deferring to the legal interpretations of agencies. And this is a rule, the rule at issue here, and this is why I say it's a pattern with the Supreme Court to these days, is the people who are complaining about the rule have never been required to change their behavior. They've never paid a dime so far as the court pleadings reveal. The rule has been suspended for a year, and it's probably not going to go into effect unless there's an appropriations specially designed for that purpose. So it's all a quite hypothetical dispute again. And yet this is the case that they've chosen to decide this highly consequential question about how the court should approach the interpretation of a statute when an agency is charged by Congress with implementing that statute. The agency typically has subject matter expertise, and so the courts for decades have said, we're gonna, when the statute is unclear, we're gonna give the benefit of the doubt to the agency. And that's the principle that the court is thinking about undoing in Loper.
Have we ever contextualized for us, because I don't know if people fully grasp the idea that generally what the Supreme Court is there to do, and I'm old enough to remember when the conservatives on the Supreme Court said we shouldn't be an activist court. That entire sort of like buzzwords and memes and euphemism seems to have completely evaporated from the mouths of Federalist Society people since the court became stacked with basically Federalist Society members. But when we have a situation where the court is not addressing an actual thing to be adjudicated, right? Like this is, and I'm trying to really lay this out for people who aren't familiar with this stuff. It's rare for particularly the Supreme Court, which doesn't have that, infinite, there's a lot of cases that they could take. It's rare for them to address cases that don't need to be resolved. Because nobody's paying these fees, like you say, it's not going to happen. There's no one's going to be made whole or not whole after this. There's going to be no real world implications for these fisheries or for the Commerce Department. Yet they're taking this case as a mechanism in which to sort of build a body of law. How compare this court's doing of that with courts in the past? Is this has there ever been an era where this has happened as much?
Well, I think that I don't know. You'd have to go back to what's called the Lochner era, when the Supreme Court was undoing all sorts of social legislation at the federal level and at the state level, and trying to really undo at the latter part of that court's reign was trying to undo some of the New Deal programs. And here it just doesn't make any sense to say that this is a passive court or a reluctant court or a careful court. I am struck at how many different layers there are to the Supreme Court's war on government, essentially, today. And it coincides with the ascension of 3 Trump-appointed justices to the court. And I think we see that. They don't have to be careful. It's Justice Roberts, who I think Chief Justice Roberts says this very concisely, which is he's always saying, if it's not necessary to decide more, it's necessary not to decide more. And that's just the basic principle. Courts are supposed to decide cases in front of them. They have lots of seemingly strict rules about how to figure out what cases belong in front of them. They don't issue advisory opinions. I can't just go to the Supreme Court and say, could you tell me whether this law is constitutional? Because I don't want to bother with it if it's not. They can't do that. And so this is it's very striking to me that the relaxation of requirements for an actual controversy in front of the court is occurring at the same time of maximal aggressiveness with respect to the substance of the law. So that the court is at once, again, not really policing as strongly as it has in the past, the boundaries of disputes in courts, but then also is taking aim at Congress's power, the agency's power, the president's power, and at the end of the day, the only institution left more powerful is the court itself.
Is that surprising though, or is it just like, I mean, could you? I mean, it seems like it's a part of an agenda. Like, I mean, if you have an agenda that you're going to sort of, and we should say the Lochner era basically was reversing a lot of like what happened during Reconstruction, or at least finding ways to sort of reimpose the as much disempowerment of freedmen that we could do in terms of voting, et cetera, and then into the New Deal era, like you say, where it's like we're going to prevent government from doing things, even whatever it is, child labor, a 40-hour work week, Social Security if they had an opportunity to, and so. I mean, what is your sense of, I know, we had 3 Trump appointees on there. They're not necessarily, I don't know, Kavanaugh has more of an agenda than, let's say, Sam Alito, but it has basically allowed Alito and Clarence Thomas in particular, it seems, to have enough power to really impose this agenda.
Yes. And if you have 6 justices, you only need 5. And so when you need 5, you're probably more careful, less aggressive than when you don't. And the justices, in particular, the newest justices, I think were put on the court because of perceptions in the White House about their anti-government leanings. That was major push then. But all this is to say a couple of things, that this doesn't mean that other justices aren't on the court, haven't been conservative. They have. The court has been very conservative for a long time. Right? It also doesn't mean that there have been that I'm saying that there have never been activist courts before. It's just, I'm struck by the kind of the speed with which they're moving, the aggressiveness, and maybe it's also fed by the fact that we have lower courts now that are extremely aggressive, as I mentioned at the outset, the Fifth Circuit. And so there gets to be this kind of conversation that I find is unproductive between the extreme lower courts and the extreme Supreme Court. And so there are a lot of things at play. Beyond the ascension of a supermajority of conservative justices, but the importance of that really can't be overstated either.
Let me just ask you, in the context of the institution of law school, broadly speaking, is there a growing sense that I don't know where I don't know your journey in this respect, but is there a growing sense that the some of the emperor has no clothes when it comes to the idea that the Supreme Court is not ideological, that these guys follow some type of like consistent mechanism of the law, and they are bound by these things, and or is there a growing awareness that they have a destination and they are sort of backfilling whatever they need to? We can come up with a new doctrine, the major questions doctrine, which is basically like, the functionally equivalent of like a get out of jail. It's like a wild card. We're gonna throw it down and we'll have it mean whatever we want it to. What is your sense of like where the institution of law in this country is in that regard?
I think it's fragile. Honestly, I think it's fragile, and I think that it's, again, a collection of a number of different forces at work. The installation of justices who should have been appointed by other people in some cases, and the financial revelations about the justices, the ties to interests with matters before the court. And this sense that any obstacle existing in law to an agenda, to a pre-existing agenda, will simply be removed. Right? It'll simply be removed. That a case like Chevron, which stood for decades and was preceded by decades and decades, maybe hundreds of years of deference, that can just be simply removed. And so there's a way in which that's quite. You asked about law schools. It's quite unsettling for law students learning about the law to think that arguments don't matter.
I guess I'm more interested in the professors. I mean, because I just wonder, like, is there? Well, I mean, look, we're 8 months away, 6 months away from an election where we may have a president who appointed 3 of these justices. Maybe they'll have an opportunity to appoint another one, even. But to have a court that seems to be fundamentally driven by ideology, and particularly with the protection that may come from having a president who's also sort of like incredibly polarizing, it seems like I don't know, that maybe people in the legal institution would have a break the glass plan.
Yeah, I'm thinking in 2 opposite directions. So let me just tell you both of them. One is, to me, I've been disappointed to some extent by the failure of judges and some academics to call out some of the methodologies of the justices that are being deployed to do such harm. And so originalism and textualism are 2 of them. So for a very recent example, Justice Breyer's now, as you may know, written a book about reading the Constitution, and he takes on originalism and textualism, which is the way that the majority of the justices approach interpretation. And yet when he was on the court, he wasn't a big critic of those methodologies. And so to some extent, I feel that both academics and sitting judges should be resisting some of these methods that, they may just be a veneer for a decision made on other grounds, but you should point out that it's a veneer. You know what I mean? I
agree. It's a little bit late for Breyer to be worrying about these things, without a doubt. Lisa Heinzerling. I don't know why your name is difficult for me to pronounce. I mean,
me neither. Yeah.
I have a lot of names that I can't pronounce. Law professor at Georgetown University. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, folks. We don't need to actually even go to break because we are going to have Heather Herbert, hospice registered nurse at PeaceHealth Medical Center in Springfield, Oregon, member of the Oregon Nurses Association, on the phone with us. Heather, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Sam.
Can we put sound up? Hi, Heather. Thanks so much for joining us. Give us a sense. I know some of your fellow nurses were on strike about a month ago. Walk us back a little bit and give us the timeline of what's been happening. We should say the Oregon Nurses Association as a union has about 15,000 members, is my understanding. Who was on strike last month? And then we can catch up to where we are today.
Sure. So my department is with home services, so hospice and home health. We went on strike, like you said, last month for a 2-week strike period, following negotiations that we've been trying to come into a contract for over a year. We've had over 40 different sessions trying to come to an agreement with PeaceHealth. PeaceHealth has historically always sat with negotiations at the same table with their hospice and home health, And this time around, they've always given us equal pay for as long as anyone can remember. And they chose to separate us and offer us substantially less than what they have been paying, what they're going to be paying the hospital, or currently are paying the hospital, actually.
And so this is fundamentally, it's about pay. Is that
sort of, yes. So we are, nurses who have the same degree. I come from the hospital. So many of my colleagues have come from the hospital. We use the same skills as we go into people's homes who would otherwise be going to the hospital to get treatment. What happens is if you cannot pay your staff well, your staff leaves. And if you don't have the workforce in order to take care of your patients, then you just become a non-functional place to work. If nurses leave, then our community does not get the care that they deserve. And so we're really standing up to make sure that our patients get the care that we have been working so hard to give them.
How many nurses are we talking about? Is it that are waiting to deal with this contract? Because my understanding is that 30 nurses left PeaceHealth last year. That sounds like an extraordinary high percentage of
we have we have about 100, and we used to have about 125 nurses, and now we have about 90. Many nurses are looking at different jobs. It's a daily conversation. Have you looked for different jobs? Have you applied? Have you gone out on interviews? When are you going to leave? that kind of stuff. And it's expensive to train a nurse. This is not a job that a brand new grad could do, because really we go into people's homes. So I could be driving 60 miles an hour away with no cell service on a dirt road and take care of a family member and their families going in unexpected circumstances. And if I don't have a plan, or if I don't understand disease processes, sometimes all I have is what's in my car. So you have to really kind of MacGyver things, and you don't have that elbow support that a new grad would need.
It's shocking to me that they lost 20%, 15, 20% of their workforce in a year. I mean, if I was going to apply for a job and I had heard that they had lost 35 or 30 of 125 employees over the past year, I'd be like, this does not sound like a place I want to work at. I mean, that's extraordinary. All right. So there was this 2-week strike. I assume it was planned for 2 weeks. And then what was the hope since then, and what has happened?
Yeah. So when we went on strike, we were really hoping that we wouldn't have to get this far. It's an amazing experience going on strike, the amount of grief and the emotion, and it's such an interesting thing to go on strike. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. When we went on strike, they chose to not meet with us for our scheduled negotiations, and which was shocking and disappointing for everybody. We would meet with them anytime, any place. We're begging to meet with them. These are our families that we've worked with for sometimes years, even on hospice. So to come onto hospice, you have to have 2 doctors who would agree and would not be surprised if someone would pass away in 6 months. But we don't do anything to hasten their death. We just kind of are there for whatever that person's life is. So we come into people's homes 2-3 times a week. We spend our holidays with them sometimes. We go at midnight when they call and there's an emergency. These are beloved people to us. So we're the ones who want to work. We want to take care of our patients. We're fighting for their right to get good, consistent care and have enough nurses to be able to take care of them.
Well, what has been the reaction of your patients / clients and their families?
Yeah, so during the strike, it was really sweet. We had one hospice patient come out. I can't tell you how meaningful that was. This person has a limited amount of energy and time left on this earth, and they came out to support us. Many patients have said that, you know, they've missed us. I was shocked to see that 3 of the people that I take care of never got visits. They just got phone calls. Some patients had to go back into the hospital because they didn't get adequate wound care or wound care at all. This is standard nursing, that our government has regulations that say, hey, this person on hospice needs to be seen every 14 days, and they didn't even get the minimum amount. And that is not what I've signed up for as a nurse. My colleagues have not signed up for that as a nurse. We want to give people the best care that they can, not just what can we get away with. So it was really disappointing.
And my understanding is over the course of the past month and a half, there has been at least 2 unfair labor practice charges that your union has filed with the National Labor Relations Board. Are there more, and what were the basis of those?
Yeah, so I don't know much about the legality side of things, just because I'm a nurse, not a lawyer. My understanding is they filed one when we went and gave our 10-day strike notice. We received an email that said that they were going to shut off our insurance and that they canceled the plan negotiation. The unfair labor practice charge that I'm familiar with was about the loss of health insurance coverage if we went out on strike. It is we have families here who have children who have medical needs. We have older nurses whose spouses need medical attention. Medicine is expensive. Insurance is really, really important to a lot of the people that I work with. And so there's a lot of fear that came with that. And when you are a part of the union, they can't try and threaten to take away your insurance. That is a protected thing. So that is the one unfair labor practice charge that I know about. I believe that there was maybe one about just not showing up when they were supposed to for the negotiations, but I don't know the details on that one.
And so what's next? Like, where are you? Where is the union at now, and what is the plans going forward?
Yeah, so we're still, we've met twice. When we came back and said these were, our concerns about how patients were treated, there was a lot of problems coming back to work. They took away our phones and our computers and shut them off, and they did not turn back on correctly. So the first few days, I was without a work phone. That's what I used to get into charts, to be able to document things. My phone it's been this long and it still doesn't work correctly. I can't get into Microsoft Teams, little glitches like that. and we're like, no, everything went great. They've just has felt very dismissive of the concerns that we've had. They have put offers forward that were less than what they had offered in the previous negotiations. So it's been really, really upsetting.
How much of
our nurses.
And so how much of this do you imagine is about this group of 125 or 100 now, or 95 nurses? And how much of this is about, and I don't know much about PeaceHealth, but if I had to guess, they probably are a pretty large company, and that they're afraid that if they set the precedent by paying what they should be paying for you all, that they're going to have to do this with other workers.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because we have Peace Harbor, which is about 60 miles away from us. They tentatively came to an agreement with their home health and hospice services. We share managers with them, doctors, social workers. I've gone over and covered shifts over there. I'm working today. It's my lunch break. We had a staff meeting, and they were there on Zoom. They're our coworkers, and they have just received an offer that is exactly the same one that we have been asking for.
Interesting. So what do you think is going on there?
I don't know. That's what we all keep asking. We all keep asking, we're 90 people. We're taking care of over 600 people in the community, keeping them out of the hospital, receiving them. We are making money for them. What we have been asking for, the CEO would have been able to cover with the bonus that she receives.
Right.
So I don't know. We're really stunned. Kind of like if you were a kid and you were asking your dad for a chocolate chip cookie and you were begging for a chocolate chip cookie and then he gave it to your sister, you'd be really upset.
Right. What can our listeners do to help?
Well, if you go to respectournurses.org, that is where there's more information with, there's a document that you can kind of sign, and it sends it off to people, and there's more information there as well for kind of different things to do.
Respectournurses.org.
Yep, or .com.
.com. All right, we will put a link to that in our podcast and YouTube description, as well as at majority.fm. Heather Herbert, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it, and good luck with your fight with PeaceHealth.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it too.
All right, folks, I'm going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program, wherein we will take some phone calls at 646-257-3920, and we will play some fun clips, because that's what we do. This is our 20th anniversary week or month or year, and hope you can join us in the fun half. And if you want to, you can by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you become a member, you not only get the free half free of commercials, but you get the fun half. And even more importantly, you're supporting a program that you're listening to on at least a semi-regular basis. They're dropping like flies. There's a real, I'm really concerned what's happening in the conservative YouTube podcast Rumble sphere. Steven Crowder sounds like his whole life is falling apart.
It sounds like the big con is coming from inside the broken home.
It is. It really is. We will get to that. Apparently, one of Steven Crowder's former employees, not apparently, has claimed that one of his former employers, and it sounds like he's only had one, recently.
It's pretty obvious which one it is.
Because of that former employer. And so I feel confident in saying that it was Steven Crowder. I think everybody knows it is. It's come out and guns a blaring finally after 2 years of like a legal sort of intimidation campaign, it seems like. Has basically said he's not going to abide by the NDA he was forced to sign. But wasn't it Crowder? Well, we can talk about this, but didn't Crowder have an issue with that when it was Daily Wire?
That's the big con. The big con is coming from inside the house.
Oh my God. We will talk more about that. But my point being, folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. Help this show survive and thrive by becoming a sustaining member at Majority Report. Join the majorityreport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, Fair Trade Coffee. They also have some hot cocoa, and get 10% off with the coupon code Majority. It's all fair trade. It's a co-op, and it's great coffee. Bradley, what's happening on ESPN this week?
So on Monday for ESPN, we recap some of the action from March Madness, both the men's and women's tournaments. Gave an update on the state of the NHL ahead of the playoffs, and touched briefly on the NFL banning the hip drop tackle ahead of the season, as well as the rumors surrounding Dodgers star Shohei Ohtani's potential gambling liability, which he's now announced that he felt as if his interpreter, he alleges that his interpreter has stolen a bunch of money from him to pay off gambling debt. So youtube.com/ESPN show to check that out, and some clips as well, and we'll be back on Monday.
Wait, what tackle did they...
There's this type of tackle in the NFL that kind of is sort of like when you kind of wrap somebody up and then kind of they land on you. That has led to some leg injuries for receivers and stuff, and so they're trying to penalize that more so it doesn't, to prevent injuries, which is like potentially a fool's errand, but we'll see.
Yeah, that stuff seems pointless. I haven't watched football in years, but it's like ever since Des Bryant had a weird catch thing on that thing, it's like, what's a catch anymore?
That's part of this. That's part of my issue with it. Is like this over legislating.
Yeah,
it's
I'll
like
stick with basketball. Ball goes through the rim.
Yeah.
You know what that means. Last night, Ben Case was on Left Reckoning doing the objective case for how to categorize what's going on in Gaza right now, which he makes the argument that using criteria pre-existing this based on the Correlates of War database, this is a colonial massacre, objectively speaking. So if you want to hear how that conclusion is arrived at, check out Left Reckoning last night. For patrons, patreon.com/Left Reckoning, we got into RFK's VP, who has been doing slime sort of therapy stuff lately, which is interesting. And
Has been doing what?
She is the chief fun officer of the Slumu Institute, which is...
you don't need to tell me about the Slumu Institute. I've been to the Slumu Institute. Are you kidding me?
I mean, it's right up there.
My kids, Mila was like a slime entrepreneur.
Oh, for real? Like you've actually heard of the Slumu Institute?
I've been there.
So,
in fact, one of the guys working there, I mean, this was like 3 years ago. It's a big slime, sort of almost like museum.
Yeah.
And there's one thing where you can have like slime shot at you. You wear like a big white like smock.
Indeed.
And you get it shot at you. And the guy who did it was a fan of the show.
Interesting. Did you do that's the enhanced experience. Did you do that?
Oh, totally. Well, I don't know.
Did you get slimed yourself or no?
Oh, I get slimed. Yeah. My kids were excited to see me get hit all over my body with slime.
But I don't know if you know that the future vice president of this country was chief fun officer for the Slumu Institute there. So.
Chief fun officer.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was. I should probably double check to make sure I'm getting that right. But
I mean, we had fun, but Mila was deep into the slime.
Would you say it's more for kids? Because I think the Slumu Institute might disagree that it's kind of adult focused what they're trying to go for.
What?
Yeah, some of the promotional materials, it was very much like, so yeah, of course kids are coming here, but actually the adults are having more fun than the kids.
The kids had more fun.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I expected to.
I didn't get so excited about putting plastic beads in my slime. That didn't,
no,
for whatever reason, that didn't really do it for me. The sparkles though, that was exciting.
Yeah, well maybe we should do a Majority Report field trip.
Yep, that's congrats on your bonus, guys. Free tickets to the Slumu. All right, 646-257-3920. Quick break. We'll take your phone calls. Fun half, ladies and gentlemen. It's happening now. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's a good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-238-56-27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.